We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. We're really excited. We think we have a pretty stellar presentation and program today. I'm just going to say a few words about our center and then try to frame the conversation about why we've invited panels of people talking about internships, labor market data, and for-profit higher education all in the same program, because the lines connecting them may not be apparent at first. Hopefully I can make them apparent. My name is Matthew Hora. I'm an assistant professor of adult and higher education in the Division of Continuing Studies and the director of our new center. And I'm just going to speak a little bit about what we're trying to do with this center, which just started last spring. There's some materials outside about the programs that we're pursuing, the lines of research that we're starting. And if you have want some more information, the web address is here. But in a nutshell, we're really focusing on cultivating and supporting research about students' experiences with the college to workforce transition. In particular, we have 4 strands of research that we're pursuing with our internal staff, but also supporting researchers outside of the university. Work-based learning, career advising, Wisconsin refugee populations, and we're doing some work with labor market data. So this program is really motivated by 2 questions. And these are some questions I'd invite you all, audience members and panelists, to think about as we spend the next couple hours together. The first is, how can students make informed decisions about lots of things related to their careers in college? Because we live, obviously, in an information-saturated society, and there's lots of information about jobs and college and careers, often contradictory. And so there's a question: how can students make really informed decisions about which majors to pursue? What type of institution should they attend? When it comes to something like work-based learning or internships, should they take one? And if so, what kind? So one of the goals of this program is to provide not the answers, but some answers and some critical questions about these problems. The other question that's really motivating this program has to do with this idea of a skills gap. This is a narrative that I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, but there's a question that should be asked. Is this narrative enhancing or impeding students as they make decisions about their careers and their education? You'll see I'm going to offer an answer to that in a minute, but I'd just like you to think about it, because this idea of a skills gap is something that it's really dominant in public discourse, and it's motivating a lot of policy and conversations about college and work. So the skills gap, again, one of the things that's important to understand, there's different types of ways to study the relationship between college, credentials, education, and the labor market. I'm going to advance the idea that a lot of people are starting to recognize. The skills gap is a very expansive public meme or narrative or frame that is often not studied empirically in labor economics and other fields such as sociology of work. It's often used by politicians, here's Governor Scott Walker, to talk about how they hear from employers that they can't find enough skilled workers to fill positions. And it's a very real concern in Wisconsin and around the country. So again, this is employers expressing concern that they simply can't find skilled workers. Now, this isn't just an interesting problem. This is something that's driving policy. And just a couple of years ago, Governor Walker said, our big challenge isn't just creating jobs, but it's filling them. It's making sure that people have the skill sets they need. So in some circles, skillification or increasing people's skills is viewed as the problem, not necessarily working on job creation. Now the question comes up then, well, what's causing this skills gap? And for many, it is this bachelor's degree holding barista working in a coffee shop, right? It's the education system. It's simply not adequately preparing the workforce. This is from the WPRI Institute out of Milwaukee. And this is a not uncommon diagnostic of the problem, that it's higher ed is simply not training people, preparing them with the right skills. But in particular, it's 4-year universities and arts and humanities programs that are not providing marketable, job-ready skill sets. So what are the solutions that some people are offering to the skills gap? The first, internships. This is one of the things we're going to be hearing about today. As you may know, in the last biennial budget in Wisconsin, there was a proposal to require all bachelor's recipients in the UW system to take an internship or other work-based learning. And here, as it was talked about, it was couched explicitly in terms of filling the skills gap, where students going through their academic programs, once they take an internship, that would transform them into being ready for work. Their skills would be more hands-on, and they would be prepared for careers. So this is one of the solutions, and you're hearing this also coming out of the White House right now in the form of apprenticeships. But the basic idea is work-based learning is a key to filling the skills gap. The other is labor market data and using it to guide career decisions. Specifically, there's lots of data out there about middle skill jobs. These are often defined as jobs that require something more than a high school diploma but not a 4-year degree. And some analysts, this is the National Skills Coalition, are calculating and claiming that over 50% of the jobs in states like Wisconsin are middle skills jobs. Now, for some analysts and advocates of the skills gap idea, these data are fueling lots of career advising at the high school and college level, where students are being geared towards 2-year colleges, but also certain occupations that these data are projecting there's going to be a lot of growth in. And this quote here is from JP Morgan, Jamie Dimons, who is one of the primary funders and supporters of a lot of the initiatives behind filling the skills gap around the country. So, what's wrong with this narrative? I don't want today to be a conversation about whether or not the skills gap exists. That's not the intent of this program. There's other folks that are wrestling with that issue. We're not going to address that today. I think instead the argument is that we need to dispense with the whole idea, that this is an oversimplification of a lot of complicated relationships between education, credentials, skills, and the labor market. So again, if you think about the skills gap argument, it's often a simple supply-demand issue where there's no problem on the demand side, it's all on the supply side. And the solution is often building career pathways, career ladders directly from college to specific jobs. What I'm suggesting is that these are a lot of other issues that we need to be thinking about as we talk about college to work. What types of institutions are we talking about? For-profits, nonprofits, 2 years, 4 years. Are we even talking about teaching and learning and how students acquire skills? What about co-curricular learning, internships? What are they supposed to look like? Which ones are effective? Which ones are not? Hiring and screening. How are employers looking at credentials and different competencies that are on somebody's CV or in an interview? And then a lot of data is showing that hiring discrimination is something that has not changed in the last few decades. Are we talking about that in the context of college to work? Is there workplace training happening in the labor market? What about changes in the structure of the labor market? And then along the bottom, these are some contextual factors that are shaping all of these phenomenon. Structural and historic inequality, geography, automation. So this is just it's an attempt to problematize the simplistic view of college to work that's embedded within the skills gap narrative. That's the intent of a lot of the research that we're supporting out of the center. And in today's program, we're going to be hearing about 3 of these components. So for-profit higher education, internships, and the structure of the labor market. We can't cover it all, but this is an attempt to start to dig in a little bit more with some precision and nuance into some of the issues that are shaping college to work transitions. So our schedule, we're going to have our first panel in a minute on internships, and then labor market data, a brief lunch, and then our keynote, we have Tressie McMillan-Cottom here from VCU, and she'll be speaking at 12:15. And then finally, I just would like to offer this food for thought for the audience and panelists. To again, think about the implications of everything that we're talking about over the next couple hours for college students. What does it mean for them, especially as they make decisions? But we've also gathered people in this room and on these panels from a lot of different disciplines and walks of life. Labor economists, sociologists, people interested in race and education, anthropologists. And so just to encourage you to think about how these different perspectives you hear either challenge or complement your own work and perspectives on these issues.